Okay, we are live now on YouTube.
Okay, just give it a couple minutes for Jolene, if we could.
Yeah, I can't hear Chuck. Can you speak? No. All right.
And
Boy,
I thought we already figured this out.
And your sound's on your computer?
No, it looks like he's not.
Is your computer volume up? Yeah.
He hears us, I'm sure, right?
Hmm.
Probably signing off and signing back in again, Chuck. Let's see if it works. I don't know. It's only you. I don't know what the heck is going on.
Hmm.
for anyone who's watching, we'll be starting the meeting shortly. We're just waiting for Jolene and Chuck to sign on. We should have Martha and Ron test theirs, Luke.
You hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
I did the same thing. I don't know what the heck, but Ron, do you want to, I'll ask you to unmute, want to say hello?
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Now.
We'll give it a couple more minutes and we'll get started.
Mike Sawicki is on as well. I don't see anyone else from Rock or anyone else that. Chuck, is this, I got your text. Is this, you can hear us, yeah?
Yes, I can hear you fine now.
Yeah, I'm only getting like one of every few. So the only text I got now is tried calling, no answer. And I'm going to assume there was a text before that, someone asking, does anyone know where Luke is?
Yeah.
That was me. That was me. I texted Chuck and I wanted to say that I tried calling you because we were getting nervous.
Well, I only got the tried calling, no answer. There's no other text here.
I texted you about 1:45 or so and said, "Are you on yet, Luke?"
Didn't get it.
Wow.
I hope to see you then, and then try calling, no answer. And that's why I missed half the conversation about everything else too. I don't know why. I'll have to check it out.
Okay, well, it's 5:05. I think.
Oh, Jolene is in under attendees somehow.
Yep. Now I can put. I see her now. I can get her. Okay.
There she is. Can you hear us, Joe?
My computer was was causing me.
There she is. Okay.
There you are.
Here we are.
Okay. I'm going to start then. Welcome to a special work session meeting to discuss the request to rezone 730 Olean Road by ROC. We'll start this meeting with a pledge. Could we all stand for the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God.
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you everyone for attending this meeting tonight, the special meeting to discuss the rezoning request. Chuck Snyder and Sue Fries did a fact finding and got some information, and it'd be probably the right thing to do would have them lead into the meeting with the information they have, and then we could discuss, go into a discussion about it. So Chuck and Sue? Or just Chuck? Go ahead.
I'll start if it's all right with you, Sue.
Yep.
Thanks, Jim. I think that a good place to start would be to get some information from our Assistant Code Enforcement Officer, Liz Cassidy, and also from Ron in regards to the easements and what we can do with the deed and stipulations and so forth. Before we get into thinking about how we're going to handle things, that way at least we get it right from them. I did speak to Liz a little bit earlier, and you were chatting a little bit. If you want to start, Liz, and tell us what conclusions you have come to, if any.
Well, so I reviewed all the emails, but particularly Bill's email to everybody from last Thursday
And
about.
If I could just interrupt one second, this is
Yeah.
in regards to Code Blue being in the building where it's in now and where that fits or doesn't fit into our code, into the state codes and so on.
Well, in particular, that property, it doesn't really fall in a clearly defined, it's not clearly defined in our code. We have group homes, we have transient housing, the roomers and the boarding houses, but this kind of fits somewhere in between. And because it's not long-term housing for group homes, and there is supervision involved, and there's no financial transaction with a rooming and boarding. So it's kind of in between the two. But I do fall in, and I agree with Bill's interpretation of the local code and the state codes in that this Code Blue shelter is allowable in a dwelling unit because they're just a non-traditional family. It's classified almost as a non-traditional family with supervision and that. So a residential dwelling unit is the requirement, and that would be an allowable use at the existing house on Olean.
As an R2. That's R2.
Yes, in that R2, yeah. It could go in other residentials, but yeah.
So what you said, long story short, is it's in the state code, but it's not in our local code
Correct,
as a permissible use.
correct.
So who has precedence there?
Yes. They're all pieces of the same pie.
Yep.
Local zoning directs how you want the areas to, and uses that you want in particular areas. And a traditional group home is a state regulated entity, and we don't have any approval or disapproval of where those can be located. We do have some in the town. We do have several in the village, typically in single family residential houses, but there is no oversight locally from that. So it's kind of, you have to take all of those pieces together. You can't separate the state regulations from the state building code regulations from the local codes. You just kind of have to find the happy medium in between. Unless you enact a new code for temporary shelters, which I did find an ordinance that was just adopted earlier this year in a city across the state.
So that happy medium, because the state code or our town code, if you wanted to look at it as possibly permissible, it says up to, I believe it says 3, isn't it, or is it 4? up to 3 boarders, would that be something that supersedes the state code? Because the state code just says you can have, 23 of you. Is that right, Liz? Or
If it's defined as a rooming house or boarding house, then yes, it's 3 boarders or roomers, which was not Bill's interpretation of this usage. He defined it as more of a group home because of the supervision that's involved, because they're not there on their own. There are people there, staff that are there to help them as they need. Our definition in the town code for the group residents talks about supervision, but it talks about custodial care.
Yep.
Well, can we take a step back here, and like this middle is a little bit concerning to me. It seems like we just haven't found the answer. Has Ron had a chance to look at this? I mean, state statutes supersede local ordinances of the town. However, the state gives us the authority to do zoning. So first of all, where is this state statute that permits this or says this?
New York State Building Code of 2020.
Okay, the building code, and we're talking about, and that has zoning regulations. I just don't know.
That has classifies the uses of buildings. And that's where Bill was talking about, to confuse matters, he was talking about the R4 classification of that building, dwelling unit, and usage as a shelter. So that is a section of that building code.
But the building code wouldn't affect the zoning though that we do locally, right? That would just be something that's a separate issue that's not related to the zoning.
well, those are the uses in it. You got a copy of that. Those are the uses allowed in that district for the state, right, Liz? R2, R3, R4. Bill went through all 3 of those.
Right, but if it's a building code, then the town law or whatever law, which gives us the authority to zone, then allows us to place those where we think we should place and what goes where, and then the local control. So just because what is it in the building code that, I mean, the building code has information about skyscrapers. You can't build a skyscraper in a residential.
You can't put it in a residential district.
Or
right?
anywhere in East Aurora. Just because it's in the building code doesn't mean that it's.
Well, it's
something
under
that-
those districts. You go ahead, Liz.
But this is a residential structure. And that falls also in the building code. And there are different uses that are allowed by the state within a residential structure as defined as an R1, R2, R3, R4. R1 being hotels, motels, that sort of thing. R4 being, as Bill just defined it, I can open it up, but I don't have it open right now. So when someone comes in and wants to put a group home in a building in the town, it has certain criteria that have to be met, and it
Right.
does have to be a dwelling unit.
Right, but if we made a zone that said there were no group homes, it doesn't matter what's in the building code. The zoning code is what regulates that activity, right?
Well, I think that's more restrictive.
It would be more restricted. So if we say in that zone, in the town of Aurora, we don't want to build A, B, C. And again, even if the building code says is more, I'm asking because I don't know, but it would seem to me, the building code says A, B, C, meaning if you have a group home in your zone that you can build, which is a separate issue, this is what it has to meet.
Mhm.
This is what it has to do. Whereas the zoning is something separate, which would regulate something separate. Ron, maybe you'd be able to jump in here.
Okay, can you
Yeah,
hear me?
yep.
Okay, what we're talking about here is the New York Building Fire Code. That applies through our zoning, through our codes, and it applies to where we build. But you're absolutely correct, it has nothing to do with the use. The use is under the town law zoning, and we determine the districts, we determine what can be built in there. When we do that, we have to conform to the building. For example, of a single family dwelling, they have regulations. if you're talking about here, whether or not the zoning permits, that's where you would start. The building is a building. So the zoning here is what, that's an R2, R3,
R2,
Two.
R2? So
R2.
anything that's permitted under R2 is a permitted use, and it can be obviously in the zoning. That's where we start from. But the specific use that it's being put to is controlled by our zoning code. Okay? And in the districts, each district sets forth what can be done. We don't usually use a negative in zoning that says what you can't do. What we always do is say what you can do. So there's codes that say no, but that's confusing. So our code in the town of Aurora provides for what can be done in each specific district. And so when we look to the district, as Liz has pointed out, whatever the uses are there, if there's a group home allowed in our code, then that is one of the uses that can be considered. So that's the distinguishing between the building code and the zoning code.
So Ron, so clearly you cannot define exactly every possible, type of entity that would want to come into your town and to do some, to establish a business or an operation or whatever. So when it is not clearly defined, it's up to the code enforcement officer to the best of their ability, apply the code that exists, correct? Because you're never going to have a code that covers everything point blank.
Jolene, if you're trying to establish a specific use in a specific district, you have to go back to the code and see how it conforms. And until we change anything in the code, that's why we're so, in general, for example, most of these say you can have a 1 or 2 family dwelling. They don't say anything about size or anything of that nature. We then go to the building code to see what they want to build. And in this case, you have a single family dwelling that is being used. It's obviously been there for years, I assume, and therefore conforms to at least the building code, probably not built according to the codes of today. But we start with that, and then what uses can be attended to that house. And when you talk about group homes, well, we have to define group homes. I mean,
But really, a dwelling is a dwelling, is a residence is a residence. And I think getting to what Bill's original interpretation is that there is no perfect definition of what that is. So that is why he's, the interpretation is that it's an allowable use of the home because people are residing there, whether it's for 1 night, 2 nights, or is that how I'm understanding that? This is really how you define the family is not.
Right. We define the dwelling unit. We define the dwelling unit. That's how it is defined. And that is a 2-family. That's a 2-family dwelling on that property. That is, a legal residence.
Yeah.
And Bill, my understanding is, Bill interpreted that as along the lines of a group home.
But when you look at the difference between R2 and R3, you go to R3, if you scroll down, Luke, to show us, it'll show that when you hit R3, you hit boarding or rooming house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're really not, it's really not a multiple, it's not a family dwelling. That's not what it is. It is more close to a boarding or rooming house with a extremely transient, not like rentals, but it could be a nightly turnover. And that property is that property in R3 right now? I'm losing my
No, it's 2.
R2.
So I'm not sure that it fits in R2 right now.
I think, yeah, so in my question in the R2, as you look at the use, when I go through this, is this. The keeping of not more than 3 roomers or boarders is a permitted use in the R2 residential district, and it's separate from these other uses.
Yeah.
So our code, I would interpret it this, unless you correct me, would not differentiate between number 4 and say you have to have number 2 in order to have number 4.
No, each one stands on its own.
Each one stands on. So right now, in an R2 use, you could keep up to 3 roomers or boarders. Would they be considered roomers or boarders?
Or would they be considered like a group home because R3 is a group home with supervision?
Right, so how do we differentiate between this here, roomers or boarders?
Okay.
A group-
Let's
a group home
just,
is gonna be,
the
group
one
home's
thing
gonna
you've
be-
got to keep in mind as we do this, okay? When you point out that they can have 3 roomers or boarders, you look for the specific provision of group homes. If you want to then to interpret number 4 as a group home, which I think probably is not correct, it does not provide for group homes. There's no
But-
provision on the permitted use unless you say you've got to fit it within one of those categories. If it doesn't fit, you can't do it.
But it doesn't, but we don't have to say group home if it fits into this 4, right? If it is 3 roomers or boarders, then what makes it absolutely have to be a group home? I mean, it has 3 roomers or boarders, right? Up to 3.
Correct.
So even a group home could have, if up to 3 roomers or boarders would be permitted in this use,
That's
in this
correct.
zone.
If you interpret it the normal, any way you want to interpret it, but if you look at that, it's the keeping of not more than 3 roomers or boarders. Okay, if that's what entails and encompasses a group home, then that's a group home. If we interpret it that way, and that's why we go back to the building department to do that. But we have to do that on our own when we look at it. Do we want that 3 roomers or boarders to be a group home?
I feel like because it's specifically spelled out in the R3 district,
Yep,
it isn't meant to be the same.
I
You
agree.
hit R3, then we added it.
Okay,
Because then it added everything in the R2 plus a boarding, well, it doesn't say group home, it says boarding rooming house.
same thing.
So we have the legislative history. You were, right? I think that interpretation could work, right? That because it's included in here A3, that is our interpretation, that it was not meant to be in A4 above in R2.
So if we classified it, I guess, the operation itself doesn't matter. It would be permitted currently in the R2 with up to 3 people.
I disagree because we specifically spell that out in R3 that you're getting a boarding rooming house.
So if I could say, just 1 minute, sorry, Sue, I don't mean to interrupt.
That's
So,
okay.
so a boarding house or a rooming house by definition in the town code allows up to 12 people to reside there, and pay. So that's the definition of the boarding house and rooming house that's allowed in the R3. In the R2, they allow for 3 boarders or roomers who also reside there. That's our town code definitions for those 2 zoning districts. So, not talking anything about this, if I had, a house in an R2 district in the town, I could have 3 boarders there without any
Good.
issue. But I couldn't have 4. And you would have to be in the R3 in order to have up to 12. And then it's officially a boarding or rooming house for people who reside there on a temporary or seasonal basis. Even clearer in the definition.
On the question of group homes, the state takes the position that they can impose that on zoning. And they've done that in communities around here that I've been involved in. They come in and say it's going to be a group home. There's resistance from the neighbors, single family dwellings and everything, and the state prevails. Now that's something that's unusual to us when they can come in and tell us to group homes, but that's what they have the authority to do. And that is a group home, a true group home where there's a number of individuals that are usually with the state.
Ron? So
Yes.
then they would be under the state regulations also then?
Well, if you're gonna be a group home, that's what they are.
They would
State
get
has
state regulate.
Jim, the state has group homes where they place these people that, need special needs or whatever. They're all around. There's one in Holland here on Legion Drive. There's one in Chafee up on Route 16.
Right.
But there's pushback sometimes because they don't want that in the individual single family dwelling. But I'm just saying that's a definition that they have used for group homes, and they prevail in zoning. There was a big case over in Eden that they tried for a long, long time, but they couldn't. It happened that the state prevailed.
Okay, but the state does not take a position, I guess, on,
No,
or action with regard to code blue houses?
well, I don't know that, but I just know that for special needs that they, the people are, if the participants are not really things that, well, they're very ambulatory. They
Right,
all have a common cook. There's here in Holland, I think there's maybe 10 people involved in it, different bedrooms.
right. No, I know we have a ton of them there's quite a few of them in the town.
So that's what you got for it. That's what I understand is a group home, according to the state and what they want to do. So anyway.
So, okay. So the rooming or boarding house, if we read that again, a dwelling unit for temporary or transient occupancy purposes by at least 3, but not more than 12 individuals, not constituting a family or functional unit, who pay expenses by the room or based on a share of the total expenses of the dwelling unit. Although the individuals here are not paying, I think you'd be stretching it by saying it, because there is compensation for the use of that home.
Right.
Can I just, go ahead, John. Can I just step in here 1 second? Because we're talking about the property, we're talking about the house. We're not talking about the property at 730. We're talking about whether that house can fits into the code blue. I'm with Bill myself, is that those things that go on with code blue just shouldn't be in that house. If we're going to allow code blue, I really think that should be part of the property at 730 or not allowed, because it's a stretch to me to say that we should allow, especially if we're going to go with the state code and allow even more people in. I don't think we should try and rezone that house, which is an R2, to an R3 to accommodate code blue. I'm personally against that. And if we have to read between the lines in the code to do that, I mean, I would be against that.
I don't disagree with you, Chuck. I think it's just, again, look, the reason we're having the conversation though is to get the, I don't know, the framework upon which,
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I don't know where everybody is on this. Jim and I were talking briefly just a little bit earlier, and this is where we was at the end of this year. No more code blue in that house. I don't know where everybody else is on that, but I am personally against rezoning it to anything.
The one question that you have is, did they ever apply to the town to have a group home, or what they're doing there? Did they come in and apply to make sure the building was adequate to do that? I don't think so.
No.
I just think they've been doing it. And I think Chuck was right, the building.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about that, right? Whether it's about changing the zoning over on the other side. I think it's more a clarification of what is permitted under our current zones. That's an R2 over there.
Exactly.
And if we think that I think we all agree here that the up to 3 boarders does not apply to a shelter or whatever. I'd like to have a little more clear answer on this. Then the current use is not permitted in that zone. Right, but
correct. I mean, the one way to do this is to say that a group home is not permitted there, and if they want to pursue that with proving that a group home can be there, it's up to them. I mean, they have never come to the board or to the building and requested what they're doing there. And it certainly isn't a single or two, family, but
Okay, but getting back to what is permitted, what would be
Yes.
permitted, whether it's a code blue or anything, would be 3. If they wanted to limit the use of that, or limit the number of people there to 3 people, that would be acceptable.
But it's 2 units, so it's 6, right? Is that true? Is it a duplex? What is that?
It doesn't say the number of boarders allowed is 3 per dwelling unit, so you could
I
just
believe
say
it'd be
3.
per dwelling.
It just says 3.
I think it would be 3, how I would read that.
And it
Yeah.
gets to with a property across the street because, when I sent that thing out about the couple options we have, if it's permitted in R3 and say the lowest thing we want to rezone this to is R3, keep it at R3, the question was whether code blue was permissible on that side of the street under that jurisdiction. So either way, you had to answer that question.
Well, if you define it as a boarding or a rooming house, then it would be up to 12 people in an R3. If you were to rezone their main property to the B2, whatever, or R3, it would be allowed.
Right.
And my question to Ron would be, if we did rezone to B2, can we put deed restrictions on what B2, what we want in that B2, or we have to go with what the code says? It says they can do that. We can't say they can't. Is that true?
here's what happens when you have a zoning and you change the code or you change the use. The town has the authority to put forth the exact purposes of that rezoning so that it eliminates other uses that could be used in the district that are not what they want to put there. Restrictive covenants are absolutely acceptable. They're done all the time. And what I did in the local law that I proposed, just as a working thing, I put in there, I picked out a couple things that could be done in, I think, B2, and I included them as the uses.
Does that get put into the, go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Does that get put into the deed, Ron? And is that a permanent thing? Can future
How it's-
boards change that?
Okay, here's how it's done. When you do the zoning and you rezone, you include in the rezoning the restrictive covenant with the option, which is normally exercised, that the parties enter into a restrictive covenant that then is filed in the Erie County Clerk's office, identifying that property so that subsequent owners are put on notice of what has happened with the property.
But with all due respect, it's kind of a deja vu. I've heard restrictive covenants before and we've had difficulty in enforcing that.
Well,
I guess I struggle with that because the code, if something is permitted, I think it's difficult if our code, our zone defines a B2 to be able to put all of these things as permitted uses, subject to special use permits, but permitted uses. I struggle with the thought of restricting the usage, because then why do we have a code? Why do we have?
Yeah, Ron, is the covenant something that we can set, or is that something that the property owner has to set as a condition for us to rezone?
When we do, the one I proposed was standard, okay? This is telling the developer or the applicant for the rezoning, yes, you're in a B1. Yes, these are the things that we're going to let you do. No gas stations, no junkyards, no whatever else, no welding shops, because it happened to fit in here between 2 residential areas.
Well,
And that is perfectly what happens. They have to execute the document as a deed, and it's filed. I mean,
there's-
if
there's-
you just rezone something and you say, okay, now it's from B2 to B1 or whatever, you've permitted all of those other uses, which is not the case. You wouldn't want that, particularly when you look at the situation that you have residential properties on both sides.
Well, this doesn't, to me, it's difficult to understand this concept because we're changing the zone. Here, what we're doing is spot zoning. We're saying we're going to make up basically a new zone by putting these restrictions on this zone. So we're saying is we're not making a B2, we're making a B35 because we want it to be different from the B2. Aren't we susceptible to risks there when we,
No. I've never had a problem with them.
have we done any, have there been any problems with in the among the state with this structure?
I mean, can do a research on it, but I don't. Obviously, there can be, in certain instances, maybe misunderstandings. But this is common. When you look at all the uses of a B, whatever it is, B2, there are many commercial things that can be done in a B2 that you don't want for this specific piece of property. That's why you have restrictive covenants that say, okay, under zoning and B2, this is a permitted use. We're going to let you permit the use, but we're going to restrict it to the use that you're using. That's all.
What if you go the other way, Ron, and zone it to a B1 because, and then the only issue really is the size of the building and they can request a variance.
Well, what can we? Yeah, can we get back to the restrictive covenant too? Who is doing the restrictive covenant? It is, we are setting that as a town?
The town.
Yeah.
The town is saying to the applicant, this is what if you want to use it for this particular purposes, and we agree to that, that's the purpose you're going to use it for.
And that gets put into the deed? I just legally here,
No,
what are we doing here? This is, I mean, the covenant that I know is in a contract, is in something else. Who's doing this and where does it end up?
I can get you proof that when you file it, you file it under deeds. It's not a deed, it's an agreement by the property owner to limit the use of the property under the zoning code to the specific thing that they applied for and the town is satisfied with. Zoning is so general when you look at, and I don't mean to refer to B2 or B1 or whatever. I'm just referring to whatever zoning classification you have. There's multiple things that you necessarily don't want in that particular area. And
Yeah, I think we all understand that. I think it's just
Okay.
this restrictive covenant thing that's, and if it's an agreement between the owner of the property and us,
Yep.
that agreement transfers to a new property owner who didn't enter into that agreement?
No, what it does, it encumbers that property. Now, we step back. Okay, if you did that and we said, okay, this is what the permitted uses are under the particular zoning for that piece of property. You sign the restrictive covenants, you have them filed, so you put on notice anyone in the future. From that, now remember, we have two different things. We have a special use permit that we fine tune everything, and that's negotiated with the particular, and the site plan review. So it establishes that particular use, and then we and the applicant do the special use permit and the site plan review. So you tailor it more. It's not spot zoning. Every time you change something, no matter what you say in this case, it's if you change zoning between two things, it's a spot, but this is common.
Well, it's not a spot if if it complies to our comprehensive plan.
Well, it's got to do with that. I'm not saying that. Yeah, it's got to do it.
Can I ask, Liz keeps shaking your head. I don't know if you have anything you want to add there, Liz.
So just as an example, just recently in the village, it came up where Benderson agreed during the TOPS move to restrict development of 5 properties that they owned on Gray Street and Knox. And to have those only be single family residential. So when somebody calls and asks about, changing one of those properties to a commercial property because it's right next to commercial land, they are not allowed to do that, even if they're the owner, because that restrictive covenant was recorded I don't know, over 10 years ago. And as long as we're aware, our office is aware, when people call and ask about potential uses of properties, we can, let them know there is a restrictive covenant on this, and you'll have to make sure that you understand what it is you're purchasing and what it is you're allowed to do.
But in that case, they're zoned as commercial and there's a restrictive covenant saying that they can't be commercial, or they're zoned as residential and there's a restrictive covenant saying that they cannot be rezoned as commercial.
They were commercial initially. During the recent zoning change, it changed to residential to reflect this covenant. So when they were zoned commercial, it said that they could not be used as a commercial. They had to be converted to single-family residences.
The restrictive covenant can always be amended by the municipality and the property owner. It's not there for 100 years. If something develops and the property owner needs it and the town looks at it, the municipality, and says, yes, this still fits, it's okay, you can amend it.
Okay.
Just similar to an easement, Ron, along the same lines as an easement.
You could, but all I'm saying is it's something that is viable and dynamic use of property.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you can't say something today and then never have it changed.
I'm familiar with the restrictive covenants for, like, if a subdivision comes in and you have a developer who wants to have rules about where you have, how your porch looks and how your house looks, right? You put a restrictive covenant in because you want to have the same feel within the development. What I'm not familiar with is the town's doing this and how that affects. I mean, the town has the authority to do this in zoning anyways, and I just have difficulty if we're able to so specifically pick off the zone that we want. Why are we zoning as a B2 when we really don't want it to be a B2? We're putting these covenants in. Does that make a problem for us? I understand that it's worked in the past, but
we're trying to zone to a B2, Luke, because that's the one that fits the building sizes. If we agree that the building sizes are what we want to allow, that's really where we should be. And just as Bill said, that's the one that fits into that.
Our problem stems from the fact,
wouldn't we want to then have the zone, and that it would be it would have them apply for a variance to change the building size, but keep it in the zone that we have as a town, rather than change the zone and then move it back with these covenants. I guess to me, it would seem more that this is the zone, and if you want to do more on it, then apply for a variance.
Right.
Rather than, we'll change your zone, but then restrict it far down.
Right. If you, I was trying to go back and put everything into context and look at this just simply as, forget that it's the Rock, just forget who it is, and say to yourself, what's the plan for that corridor? What's there right now, et cetera, et cetera. So of course you go back to the regional plan that, obviously we didn't adopt, but we do use it. So the thought is, between like the village and, the 400 there would be a different type of commercial district that would be allowed. When we go from B1 to B2, you're going from 5,000 square feet to 55,000 square feet. And that is a giant leap. And a lot of different things can come in there. And I think when we think of a mixed use corridor, most people in their minds think, oh, there's going to be a doctor's office, or there's going to be a little insurance agency, or there's going to be, those types of businesses that kind of fit in a mixed use area, not huge retail, doesn't compete with the village retail, etc. So our code is missing this middle ground piece. So you're either with B1 and you say, in general, we don't want that corridor to be B2. It doesn't fit with what the vision is.
It is
so
B2.
You B1 and your variant.
It is B2. It's already not this property, but that corridor is B2. All the way past to Masterson's, all but 4 parcels.
Across the street it is. Not on that side.
2 parcels up from this property. Or 3.
It is, except in that area of, I forgot
mixed
how many
use
parcels that
That area on that side of the street.
by the street.
So I think
high.
I agree with you here in that, like, this is the way we should be thinking, right? We're not thinking specifically to this one owner and this one request.
Right.
And a B1 seems clearly outside of that regional plan in the what is necessary for that area. So that's why I said back to my question, wouldn't we want to zone it as the zone that it should be based on the comprehensive plan, the regional plan, and what that part of the town is supposed to develop. And if the rock or whatever property doesn't fit within that, then they would go to the zoning board for a variance, right?
Yes.
So our zone should be regardless of the rock, should be, this is the zone for that area of the town, and that's it. And then anything outside of that, you get a variance.
On that side, I'm looking at the zoning map. On that side, this is where the proposed rock
Right.
is to go. To the north of the residential part, with the area that's R2, to the north of that is RR. Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes. And
yeah.
I'm pointing and you can't see me
Yeah.
pointing.
We in the town of Aurora are so technologically advanced now. Look at this.
So it's B2 is the pink. So what butts up, slide it up a little bit there, Luke. What's up against the R2 is rural residential, right? But on the same side of the street is the rock. It's rural residential. And now if you slide that map up on the other side,
I got a little
I'm
too
trying
fancy.
to move it with my mouse.
I do that all the
Oh, the
time.
other way. The other way.
Down here.
Keep going. And that's the red is B1. So on that side of it, it's B1. So to me, what's abutting those residential properties is B1 and RR.
Well, across from that B1 is B2 there. That's where the Iron Kettle is. But-
Yes, it is.
And I believe there's a couple businesses to the south, as I recall. Kind of hard to tell with the colors there. I think that whole section there, though, is B2.
So this here-
those properties. Yeah, just go to the south of that. I think those are B2s.
Yes, it is.
They are.
Circle the just so if anybody's watching, circle the rock property on here so people that aren't familiar can tell where we're talking.
We are talking.
Keep going. No, keep going.
Going.
You got to slide your map down.
I'm trying to move it for you.
Really testing my technical abilities here.
Nope.
Other
Nope,
way.
the other way.
Other way.
The other way.
There we go. All right, which one? It's this one right here, right?
Nope,
No.
keep going
Nope,
north,
keep going.
North of the 400. It's right.
right?
Stop.
That,
No.
Whoop.
cross from the dark blue.
Yes.
Right here.
The
Right there.
funky
Yep.
shaped
Right there.
one.
That's right. Okay.
Right.
You sure?
No, isn't it the second one
It's
in?
not. It's the green. It's the second one in.
This
It's-
one.
Yeah.
This one.
No, it's across from the blue.
This one here.
Yes.
Where's the railroad tracks?
I don't think so. I
Right
think
there.
it's the other one.
Okay. Okay. That's the shape. That's the
I don't know
outline.
if you have your map, Sue.
Oh, I see it. I see it. I got it here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the shape.
So I just want to throw out Bill Kramer's thoughts about zoning it as a B1 and having the property owner request the variance. The concern there is the perception that that they're kind of being forced to do this variance, to give the approval. But that's, that's an impression, and the Rock would have to make their appeal to the zoning board, and it is possible that they may not get that variance. It is a significant variance with a 5,000 square foot building limit in a B1. A 9,000 square foot building is a significant ask for a variance. It's not impossible, but it is significant.
But I think isn't that the proper mechanism to use to do this though? If we are saying that, I mean, there's no B1 here, right? There's no B1 anywhere in the vicinity. So
Correct.
to
Correct.
put this as a B1 would be quite out of the context of the surrounding zones, which I would be uncomfortable with.
No,
That would be almost a spot zone.
That would be a spot zone. So B1 seems to me to not be, but B2 would be certainly, I mean, it makes sense as a part of this district, right?
The
Mhm.
B2 is the 55,000 square foot one.
No,
Oh, I'm
wait,
confusing it.
So then you restrict it.
can I say
Wait,
something?
these are all B2 here?
yes.
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 On the right side of the road there, where there's the brown and the green. Brown and green are all residential on that
Right.
side of the road. They're either R2 or RR.
These are R2s.
So what we're
These
saying
are-
is, on that side of the road, we want to plop a B2 in the middle of it. Because across the street, there's been a B2 stretch, and Masterson's is the odd one out with an I zoning. So you're really popping a B2 district, or even B1, in the middle of a rural residential stretch.
Which I think is, if you look at the map and the properties that are between, from the Rock north towards the village, towards the first B2 property there, the likelihood that those parcels could also request rezoning for commercial development is pretty high. There's a, I don't know, cement factory there, or was, there's, a large vacant parcel. So, and the request that they could have is the same, the B2, which would make sense because of the surrounding properties and their zoning,
Except if you're an owner of the residential properties in that stretch.
right?
But I know at least the one home was built long, I mean, you have to also look at when they were in existence. The B1 and B2 businesses there have been in existence. There has to be some sort of, priority or precedence given to, they've been there longer than the, I don't know about all the residential homes, but, anyone, for example, now building there, to have
Knows what they're getting.
yes. Yes.
Can I speak on it?
Yes.
Sure.
All right. I prepared a local law that you've all seen.
You said that, actually, I don't know if is it a printout or was it an email?
It's a printout. And on section 3 is restrictions on use. It references B2. So I go over to B2 in the zoning code. And under that, there are A to N uses. So B happened to be assembly hall or auditorium, which I thought was fitting what they were going to do. M is a club, organization, or recreational area, including camps and campsites. I put that in there as a recreation or building with that. And the last one was customary business accessories. Now, those are the 3 uses that I selected that seem to match. Remember, this is not going to be specific. This is just in general, because the special use permit and site plan approval are going to be the ones that really nail it down. Now, if you look and you talk about 55,000 square feet, under that, the building size, it says for manufacturing. We're not going to permit manufacturing there, so 55,000 square maximum feet doesn't apply. Retail is 55,000 square feet maximum. This is not retail. What we've done by taking the local law and put in there, and you can select whatever ones you want, but those are the ones that I thought were most germane to what we're doing. And so I picked those out. All the other uses under that, including funeral homes, motels, usually car lots, warehouse, indoor shooting or archery ranges, all those are not permitted because we selected what the property owner wanted, and we limited that to the restrictive covenant. That's where you start. So you have to look over to the specifications of the buildings, what you're trying to do here. So the 55,000 square feet would not apply at all because it's not retail or manufacturing. This is the way you custom your zoning through a restrictive covenant. It's done all the time. If we were to go and say, okay, we're going to use B2 and any uses there can be permitted, you've got all those different ones that you certainly wouldn't want there. That's all. That's how you're able to limit what that property is going to look like. And so it could be a restaurant, a cabin, a tavern, a banquet facility, just all different kinds of things, automobile filling station, truck repair, auto things. Those are the things that are permitted in B2, but not on this piece of property. I wouldn't think, but you can tailor that to whatever you want, because the restrictive covenants are the broad uses that you're going to permit. You then go on to the special use permit and say, okay, now we're going to give a special use permit, but we're going to do A, B, and C, and D.
Right.
Well, the site plan approval is the same thing. So those are the two things that the town now proceeds with the authority to establish the fine lines of what they're doing. That's how you do restrictive zoning.
Okay, it sounds to me that that is the most responsible way to go. And obviously, if Liz is, familiar with where it's been used and used successfully, that it's appropriate. Ron, I guess I'm missing something. Did you send something recently? Because I didn't see it. What's this document you're referring to?
That was put on for your public hearing.
No, but
The local law that was going to be rezoned, correct? We had a public hearing on it, didn't we?
right.
And in
Yes.
that local law, it spells out the restrictions on use. And I did that by going to the B2 thinking of, well, these look like the ones that we do. I did that as a draft. You can tailor them to do it, as long as you're doing them within the permitted uses. So it's right in the local law that you all have.
And it files with, all right, I guess, I'm gonna have to have faith that it's enforceable is what I
If it
struggle.
wasn't, if it wasn't, then they could run rapid over and do anything they wanted. I mean, if it's not enforceable, and it always can be amended between the parties. Okay, for future down the road, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it doesn't restrict it to that, but it's got to come back to the town, because the town is one of the parties that has to agree to the restrictive covenant. That's the protection to the other property owners, because it has to be a party. The town has to be a party to whomever chooses.
Are you confident, Sue, that those restrictions would hold?
I mean, I gotta, I mean, I don't know. You don't ever know until you go to court and say if they stick. I'm still taking a step back and saying, when we make this decision, we have to say, you have to take who's using it out and just say, is that what we want in that area? Even with or without all the restrictions that we put on it. Is that, to me, I'm still looking at that whole RR, that whole side of the street is RR and R2, I think. It's green R2.
Let me.
And I feel like I'm putting a B, if I'm rezoning anything in there, I'm rezoning it to make it look like it was across the street.
Let me ask you this, though. Let's just say for a second, we went with a B1 and we got a variance to build not only the 9,000 square foot building, but another 4,500. But we zoned it B1.
Mm-hmm.
Or we zoned it B2, we built the 9,000 square foot building and the 4,500 square foot
with the
restrictions on it.
Right.
At the end of the day, if they're enforceable,
if it's enforceable, it's the same thing, right?
It's the same thing.
Right. The piece that still remains unsettled is code blue. Because then if I don't think that's been resolved yet. Because I think we all are still all interpreting code, whether that house across the street can have it or not. I really don't think our code reads into that. And I think there's a difference between the way we're all looking at it. And if it's allowed there, and if the plan is to move code blue across the street, and then because of building codes, like Liz says, now you can have more code blue transient people there. I don't feel like that's a fit for the neighborhood. I feel for the neighbors that are there that bought on a whole stretch of residential, even if they bought across the street from a business district.
Would you be more comfortable if that was one of the restrictions?
I would.
I would agree.
But I think we have obviously that is not a use that would, if we look at our comprehensive plan and what that area of the town, how it should develop. Code blue doesn't fit into whether it's a business or it's the sort of mixed residential use, right? It doesn't fit into that plan. I do
Right.
feel
Well, it's vague, but yeah, it's supposed. Yeah.
It's
Liz,
What?
it's up to Liz.
It is up to Liz. I guess
No, I mean,
I'm struggling with this because, again, we put people in this position and that's their responsibility. And we also, in trying to do our due diligence here, can muddy up the water. There is no absolutely perfect black and white 100%. It is no matter what, it just isn't that way. It's open to interpretation like every single code that we have.
yeah, but our job is to make it as not open to interpretation as possible, not just to throw it to the wind.
But the reality of it is right now we have the code that we have. And we have to interpret it.
Yeah, my thing is that whatever decision is made here, we have to make it in accordance with plan for that part of the town and separate what this specific use is and make a decision based on how that part of the town should develop is a part of the town. And with these restrictions, I agree that I like it. I like the idea. I think that's good. But I think we need to be coming at this as, what is this area of the town supposed to be developed? Make the zone, and then it develops like that. That's a cleaner way of doing it than the way we propose. If this is the best way to do it, then that's how it is. I just think the right way to do it is to zone it, and that's the zone that it's supposed to have. And those are the uses that you can do within that zone. And if there's some sort of variance, then to apply for a variance. Rather than to do a zone and pick off little parts of it.
Well, I agree with you on one hand, Luke, but on the other hand, if this was forget the rock, if this was a business coming in here and they said, all I need is a B1, and we said, well, gee, that really should be a B2 because, for whatever reasons you want to justify in your own mind, because across the street it's all B2s up there, or whatever you want to use to justify it, we wouldn't say, I don't think, that, you know what, I know you only need a B1, but it really should be a B2. We would never say that. So trying to,
I think
figure in your mind of where the town wants to be 25 years down the road, that's kind of tough.
Well, I think that's what the law requires of us, right? That's why we're not spot zone.
Would you zone it that way? If a business was coming in there that all they needed was a B1, would you say, what, we really should have a B2?
Well, I think we want to zone it based on our comprehensive plan, right? So what is our plan for that area of the town? If we think, regardless of, just like I'm saying, we don't want to think about what the Rock is specifically doing. We wouldn't want to think specifically about what their business is doing. We want our zones to reflect the plan that we set for the town, regardless of individual applicants.
You're both saying the same thing. You're just getting at it. One's getting at it from the left and one's getting at it from the right. We don't have the zones. So Chuck, you're backing into it by saying B2 and take all the restrictions on it. And Luke is saying, let's make a zone. Let's call it B0, or B1.5, whatever. That's between B1 and B2 or whatever it is we want to make that stretch, and then let people go into that spot.
Well, is that,
Let me
is
say
that a,
something too. The only thing that I'm struggling with a little bit with regard to what you're saying is that, the comprehensive plan is a guide and is not clearly defined. Because if it was, this would all be rezoned already if, it was that cut and dry. You still have to look, parcel by parcel and you use that as a guide, that, that plan, but the comprehensive plan doesn't give us an answer for this. It doesn't tell us for sure this is what we need to do or not do.
The question we're asking ourselves, if this is just I don't know, a company with 15 or 20 employees and a warehouse, and they want 9,000 square feet of offices and they want 4,000 square feet of storage. Is that something that we feel fits in that stretch? Should we take out who they are? So we were saying, is that stretch someplace that you want 15,000 square feet of building? I mean, Chuck, you can visualize 15,000 square feet better than I can on a single
That's
floor.
tops. That's tops. Tops is 50. That's how that number.
It's 15,000 square feet.
Oh, 15?
15. What's 15?
Tops supermarket is 55, I think.
55.
is
Yeah,
this
give me a 15,000 square foot building in town. Give me one to frame of reference.
what,
Glebe was a lot.
New town hall is 20,000.
Yeah.
Oh, new town hall's 20, but that's 2 floors. Oh yeah, 2 floors.
That's 2 floors. Yeah.
So it's 10,000 on the bottom.
Yep.
well, if this should be a zone B 1.5 and the surrounding areas, why wouldn't we make a zone B 1.5 and have those areas be the new B3 zone, B 1.5? If we think that there's not a fit, if we think this is the way the town should develop, this is how the plan says it, and I kind of disagree with you, Jolene, a little bit, because by law, we do have to follow that comprehensive plan, right? But if we do feel that there's not a zone for that part of the town, and would we not want to consider creating a zone that would reflect that? Or is there a negative thing in that I'm not thinking of?
But that's.
Did we lose you?
No, I'm just.
Oh,
Reading
stop.
So what you're saying though, Luke, is you don't think that the restrictive covenants is the way to go? Because
I mean, I think we're getting, I'm just questioning, are we getting to the goal that we all have in the proper manner? Or would it be more proper to do a new zone that reflects what actually is the type of development that should be in that area? And that's certainly not spot zoning. What we're doing is we're saying, this is what's best for the town. This is the plan going forward. This is the zone for that area. And
provided, and we're basing that all on, in this particular case, the rural outreach center.
no, we're basing that on how we feel the town should develop in that part.
Areas
And
should be
if the
zoned.
rural outreach center fits within that understanding, then it fits within that understanding. But I think how we're coming at it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is that we're saying, yeah, RR for that part of the town is not exactly the way that it should be developing. That's maybe not in the best interest of the town. So there is something else that would be in the best interest of the town, regardless of rock. What are
That's a
those?
much longer process,
Yeah.
for sure.
And not as cut and dry as it sounds, because.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. And I think we get community input and it'd be difficult, but is that not the proper way to go?
Then we'll have a 1.75 and a 1.25.
Yep.
Well,
I agree. I agree. Yeah, 'cause
I don't
It
think,
could be.
well, I mean, come on, between, what is it, 5,500 and 55,000, or what is it? There's a big difference there. And it's up to us not to have a 1.75. Is it reasonable to have a B3? I think everyone would say that it's reasonable that if there is a need to have something between 55,000 and the 5,000 or whatever it is, then that's certainly not making a zone 7 to be 75. I mean, that's a hard.
Right.
First of all, would a
Right,
50,000
59
square foot building fit on that piece of property?
Yeah,
Say it
it would.
again, Jim?
Would a 50,000 square foot piece, building fit on that piece of property?
Well, it would.
I mean,
It
we
would.
just,
I think there's,
you wouldn't have any parking. You wouldn't have anything.
well, would have much less parking, yeah.
So I guess someone else, I walked over somebody. Was it Jolene or?
So,
The 55,000 square foot buildings in the B2 is, as Ron said, for retail and for manufacturing. Everything else is, that's the only thing in the B2 that's, you know, not desirable. And then a couple of the uses. I guess I would lean toward where Ron is at, in that you define it as a B2. That's probably as close to the comprehensive plan, Luke, as you can get. I mean, because there's B2 and I on, adjacent to those parcels, to that parcel, and then restrictive covenant to prevent the undesirable, the things that would not fit in that area. The 55,000 square foot retail, the manufacturing, maybe the amusement park, and, but everything else is really okay. It would fit in.
and we can,
When you look in the back of that property too, it's got the highway garage, when you go by there right now, behind it is also rather industrialized, even though it just by what the use is with the highway barn back there. Now that's a little bit further south from the Rocks property, but it's behind all of those it's behind a good chunk of those, behind the residential there.
If there is if we limited it to no code blue, and maybe this is a question for Mike if he's still on, if there was no code blue over there, would you have the need for the extra 4,000 square foot building?
He's off.
Oh.
Sorry.
I think their plan talked about it being storage. Part of it being storage and and other uses, a mixed use building.
I'd like to know the answer to that. I mean, I'm a definite no if code blue is going over there, so that's an easy one for me. That would have to be in the restrictions for sure. I'm still sensitive to the neighbors that are there before, that are already there, surrounding it.
So Sue, if it was a B2 permits
All sorts of things we'd have to restrict.
what
with
in
the
the
covenant.
code blue stuff, we would put that into we would
The
define that,
covenants.
but a B2 would permit what am I thinking of here? A group home? B2 permits groups home. B2
Right.
zone, you can build a group home in a B2 zone.
Yeah.
B2 includes the uses as regulated in a B1. It also
Yeah.
includes the uses and as regulated in the R3, which
Right.
would allow your rooming and boarding house, and a group home can go where a group home goes.
We have the right to restrict that with our covenants.
Yes.
Right.
We don't address
there's
it anywhere in our codes, I'll tell you that.
There is a comment in the chat here from Crystal Dedrick that said, when I spoke to Frank, code blue was going to go in the additional 4,000 square foot building. So my thought was, if that was the case, maybe we're looking at a 9,000 square foot building on this property for their uses for counseling and stuff, if that's out of the.
I think some of that 4,000 square foot building was going to be storage because I talked to Mike Swicky yesterday.
All right. Well, if there's no code blue, maybe it's 2,000. I don't, you know what I mean? Or 1,000, whatever that is.
I'm with you, Sue, on, and I think maybe we should just go around and see wherever everyone is. But I think we go with B2 with the restrictive covenants, and one of those would be no code blue.
I'm, as of right now, subject to change, I'm in agreement with you, Jim, but I'd like to, go through every use in, actually Sue brings up a good point, or Luke brings up a good point. not only just the uses in B2, but the ones in B1, because as Liz said, all of those are permitted. So, but I'm warm and fuzzy with that.
Permitted, but we can restrict them.
Yes, we can. Just want to make sure we get them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to take a look into these restrictions and see if see how they work and what some of the other restrictions are around. Be good to see if there's been any challenges of the restrictions to make sure that they will hold up.
I agree.
That would be great.
I'm a little hesitant there. As far as I'm concerned, is that I wish we had the comprehensive plan that we could refer back to that was a little bit fresher, but the one that we have that we're using, this is exactly how that part of the
Right.
town is
What,
to develop.
yeah. One of the things that I think, Joe, and I would caution you on is that the town didn't officially adopt it, and there's pros to not adopting it and cons to not adopting it. But when you look at the comprehensive plan, there's regional desires as well as town of Aurora desires, and they don't always mesh. Like what of course, Springville would probably love more retail out closer toward them, and we don't want it out in the town, etc. We use it.
Another tool.
It's a tool that we use along with our codes, and it's just one piece that we use in. We don't necessarily follow it like this because we know that other towns' input comes into it. Elma and the village may have different uses for us, where we as town residents say, no, that I know it would be good for you, but that's not good for us.
And without an adopted comprehensive plan, your zoning is your comprehensive plan. We using both as a tool.
Even with one, your zoning is your plan.
No, I think this is a conversation probably for another time because we've gone a long time, but
Right.
a comprehensive plan is something we have to have, and we have to base our decisions on that. We can't, zoning is implementation of the comprehensive plan, and we have to have a comprehensive plan. And whether we adopt it or not,
We did.
we have to base our decisions on that. So
when we redid the codes, Luke, when we redid the codes
Yeah.
5 years ago or whatever that was, which was a long, long process. In the end of it, we said that we gave it 2 corridors where we wanted businesses in the town of Aurora, which was 28 and Route 16. And we said, in a perfect world, we'll start out with the I's and then the B2s and then the B1s and down the line. And that's what we're
the comprehensive plan does not have to be, it even says that, in many court decisions, comprehensive plan does not have to be an enacted document. Right. It has to be a comprehensive plan for the town. So what is our overall goal? And
but to finish that, is many of those properties, just as this has, for instance, are already zoned other things. If we could turn back the clock, that's what we would have done. But we have to take into consideration, as Sue says, we have to take into consideration that okay, there's some R2s, there's some AAs in there, or RRs and As. We have to work with that.
Right. I can say that without the code blue and maybe making that second footprint of the building smaller will give me some thought. But I'm still struggling with that whole side already being residential and the folks that were there already, I don't know. I just have I have to think that through a little bit.
I encourage you, Sue, to do what I did too, is drive by again a few times, because when I looked at
I went today.
When I looked at I drive there every day. I drive by there
I know.
every day. And when I looked at the map, and looking at the colors, I felt that way. And as I drove by again and really looked at
I agree.
the majority of the area and what goes behind those residential homes.
Right. And now's a good time to see it because there's no leaves.
It opened my eyes a little bit.
Okay, well, where do we go from here right now, guys?
Well, Luke, you said you were going to check on the restrictions, whether you feel they're.
Yeah, I think if we get Ron to do that check as well, that'd be good. And just take a look around and see, are there any challenges to those restrictions that would put anything we do into doubt? Yeah, and I'll do my own research as well.
Personally, I think what RAC is asking for, at 7:30 with the restrictions. I think a lot of the issues for the neighbors can be mitigated with fences and everything else that we're talking about. I'm just not comfortable with the code blue in that area. And I do feel for the neighbors on that, but I think that we could probably make the rock part work with the restrictions that we're talking about. So I think we just need to get them down on paper and look at what we want to do as far as the restrictions.
Hey, Chuck, do you think you could follow up and see if they would reduce the footprint of that 4,000 square foot without a code blue?
Absolutely.
I'd like to maybe talk to the county as well. This is a county program, right? About, I mean, there is a need for, unfortunately, there is a need for something like this out in the rural parts. And it sounds like it was in South Wales and it did not go well. And it's here now and we can understand the neighbors. Is there not a better long-term solution for code blue in the rural areas where we can address homelessness out here?
That's
I talked
something
to
we
Frank
need to,
today a little bit. I talked to Frank for a couple minutes today on my way home from work. And, because I said, did they request it? How, was it because it was, a need and that it needs to be in the South towns or what the situation was. And he is going to get me a copy of the contract and see if he can find an electronic copy of the contract. I'm just curious to see what it, it doesn't spell out how big or, I don't know, whatever. So
something I think we need to, I think we need to address in our code though, is an area where that would fall into possibly, which our code doesn't address.
well, I mean, in the city, it's in a residential area. I mean, it's a residential thing. It's not a commercial thing. I mean, it's, I'm assuming in the, in the wellness in the city, I guess it's not really it's in the city. So I guess it's not really residential. It's a residential use, it's not a warehouse. It's housing people like a group home, whether not defining it as that, but I'm not sure, do you put it in a manufacturing area? I don't think so. I mean, they're people. I think it's a residential use. We just,
Yeah. I think Jolene, my only, we think about this, right? I certainly understand the residents and their concerns. And to be honest, if it was my house next to it, I would be concerned as well. I also just think that, we are aware of this issue now and we know that there is, I don't want, no matter what these people have done in their background, right? We're all humans and this is a program designed to get people off the street when it's cold. And I don't want to just let it go and say, no, it can't be there without at least making an effort to see, can we find a solution for this program long-term? Because again, it's unfortunate that we need to have it. And no solution is going to be perfect for that, but.
No, but I look back though at that property, it's where the house is right now, in some ways would be, it's not right on top of, say it's not in the village right next to a whole backing up to a house and houses on either side and houses across the street. Where it is right now, it's next to an industrial zone and nothing behind it. And I think it's to the south.
I kind of disagree, Joe, and only because they get paid for this. The Rock gets paid to have this code blue. To me, that's a business. I think it should be more in a business area.
Well, it is in a business. I'm not sure how much more business you can get next to an I zone, nothing in the back.
It's an R2.
It is the property right now because it is a house. That's why it's an R2. But getting to looking at our comprehensive plan, would it be an R2? I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying if we're gonna put it in another area in the town, and we're gonna find a district to put code blue in, I believe it should be in a B district.
But you
Not
wouldn't
in an
have
R
homes
district.
typically in a B district.
Did
It's
we,
a
and
business. It's a
did we
business. Plain and
did we exclude, I mean, it is a nonprofit, and in the nonprofits,
Goes,
did
goes
we
my
exclude?
company half the time.
Did we exclude the, yeah, we don't want to go down that New York State conversation I feel that's heading to, right? In our governor. The R2, was it R2 or R3 that had a special use permit possible for nonprofit organizations? Did we
R3.
investigate R3? We investigated that, and that is not.
There's really not a dwelling size or anything there. The thought was that it's not really a residential. So Bill and Liz both thought the business, it was like you're saying, it's a business, not a residential place. So they thought the fit was better in the business districts. I mean, since the code is interpretive anyway, could you say that it's an R3 use? You probably could, because the code's not specific and not to rule out a not-for-profit, you know.
Right.
Um,
Well, I mean, just like we say, a farm is a business, but there's a special agricultural use, right? If a nonprofit is a business, but it's included in rural residential, then that would be fine. But okay, I just
yeah,
I agree that it's not it doesn't, we wouldn't look at that and say this is an R3 zone, right? If we
yes,
take
right,
so
right. It's not like a house. I mean, my guess is that they thought there would be somebody would use a house as a not-for-profit and run their offices out of it, etc. And that was the intent. I don't know that, but that would have been my guess.
Yeah. I agree.
Chuck, what do you think where we should go from here as far as another meeting or?
I think that, I mean, we don't have to, I think we should find out what Luke finds out, and I'll check with Frank on the size of the building, and hopefully midweek or so, we can come back with these things, and if we have all of our information and we're all set on it, then let's put it on next week's agenda, but if not, let's wait.
Right.
So
I
we
mean,
would
I
have to take the code we'd have to take and write down all the restrictive covenants that apply to the B2 and what our us to accomplish, and make sure that
Right.
maybe start with Ron's draft and work from that.
Yep.
I would like to see another public hearing once that's drafted.
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I know it lengthens the process, but I'd rather do it right. And I'd rather make sure that we address the concerns with all the covenants and that we didn't miss any. And I'd like to make sure that the neighbors have can see what those covenants are and make sure that they're comfortable.
We could do that.
You could do that. Maybe this next meeting, you could set that public hearing, and we'll certainly, unless something really goes haywire. we could
Martha's
have
saying
our-
if we're making changes, we need to have one anyway. So there we go.
Could have our preliminary for sure.
Yeah. So
So we would have to set at our meeting, we would have to set a date for a public hearing.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. But at that meeting, if we would have our covenants or have a good idea, at least the people would know what they were speaking on at the public hearing.
Martha is just texting in. This is fantastic, right? It's perfect. I'm so happy. Like Martha is the reason, the reason here, and we get texts we can read as we're going along. It's perfect.
Right. It does work. It's good.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I still prefer to be sitting around a table, looking at the map, hashing it out together. I'm sorry.
Well, as of next week, we should have the ability to use those microphones and the ones that the wireless ones. So even if we sit down below with the map, we could do that. So that's good.
Well, I think this went much better than I expected it to go as a conversation for zoning. So good. Great job.
All right. So are everyone happy with what we're going to do here, and we're all on the same page?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to move forward and see what those covenants look like and what the use of that building is and whether they're enforceable. And then we'll decide where we're going from there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So declare the end of the meeting.
Does Ron or Liz have anything that they want to add to this?
Liz, how's it feel, your first meeting in power?
No, not yet. Bill's still on vacation.
Oh,
Oh, geez.
That's how we're easing into this.
So you're,
That-
so you're
that's why-
not,
that's-
not
yeah.
in power, you're just doing all the work.
I was
Right.
going to say, the power hasn't gone to your head. I like that. I guess it
No,
hasn't.
no.
Time will only tell if that's true or not. But,
Oh, God, I hope not.
Ron, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay,
Thanks, guys.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Have a
good
good
weekend.
weekend.
Good night.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.